The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
It is episode number 48. It is 271 days till the man burns as of this recording. I'd like to just take some time to pay some respect to the victims of the horrible fire at Ghost Ship in Oakland. For those of you that may not be aware, Ghost Ship was an artist space and warehouse, and also housed some of the artists that were connected to it as a collective. As of now, the death toll stands at 36 people. The long and short of it is that the building was not up to code and they were having a party and a fire broke out. This event has definitely rocked our community because if you are a listener to this show, chances are very high that you've been to a warehouse party or two in your life. I've had multiple conversations with friends about the situation. I don't know a whole lot about Ghost Ship Collective, but they seem to have had some ties to our community, as I imagine any artist collective in the Bay Area would, pretty much by default. I was chatting with Navjeet just last night, our network music editor and producer of Alkaline, and he was thinking about all the times we've been in some sketchy places for parties. And we kind of pride ourselves on how we party. We attend and are a party to parties in places that most would never even dream of visiting, much less setting up DJ decks and a sound system in. So there are a lot of stories. We won't speculate too much on that just now. I would also mention that another viewpoint, which has a great deal of credibility in my opinion, is that this was most definitely not an issue with ravers or burners, raving and burning, but a reflection of the Bay Area's housing crisis. People are desperate and squeezing into any corner they can find because it's so damn impossible to afford rent up there. Anyways, I am certain this will be a subject we will revisit on a future episode of this show with someone who can speak on the issue with credibility. So until then, we'll just say that our hearts go out to all those affected by this terrible tragedy. Should you feel compelled to donate to the families of those affected, there are GoFundMe and YouCaring accounts set up. Simply Google Ghost Ship Fire GoFundMe or Ghost Ship Fire YouCaring, and it should pop right up. So let's move on ahead to today's episode. Ours is a very wide-ranging community. There's no typical burner. Burners are artists and scientists. We are builders and healers. We can be atheists or deeply spiritual types. We've had guests that would roll their eyes all the way to the back of their head at some of the things that we're going to talk about in today's conversation. And that is so beyond okay, because the point of this entire experiment, which we call Burner Podcast, is to document all corners of our community and culture. I got interested in doing a show on this particular topic after having a Tantra healing session with one of the two guests whose voices you are about to hear. And it was such an amazing experience. I've had truly powerful energy healing experiences, but I'm also the first one to say that you've got to really want and be open to it in order for it to work. Call it self-hypnosis, if you will. There are many paths to personal growth, and what works for me doesn't have to work for you. But if you're not into the woo, I'm doing the quoties, as we burners affectionately like to call it, don't tune out just yet. Tantra is an age-old philosophy and practice, and most importantly, it is something you're probably interacting with on a daily basis. And it's not just in our community either. At this point, tantric philosophies have really made a splash in the quote-unquote mainstream. So Here is an episode that will help you understand some of that goddess stuff everybody's ranting on about at that house party where you pretended to be interested in that cute hippie chick with the red dress last Thursday. Hypothetically speaking. And that stuff you keep hearing about, chakras this and goddess that. On today's episode, you'll get some illuminating backstory on that conversation. Our guests today are Amy Thornton, healer and Tantra practitioner, and Shawn Roop, founder of TantraQuest. Amy has recently finished Shawn's Tantra counseling course. You will learn more about both of these wonderful souls very shortly. What sorts of things would you go see a Tantra counselor for? Well, maybe you're feeling stuck in life and can't figure out why. Maybe you're trying to be better. You're trying to connect better with who you are or with your partner. It can, but it doesn't have to be about sex and intimacy. But boy, do so many of our energetic and psychological blockages trace back to sex and intimacy. There are many, many reasons why you might feel yourself being called, if you will, to book time with a Tantra counselor. What is Tantra? And what sorts of stuff can you expect? Hopefully, you will walk away from today's conversation with a better understanding of just that. Today's episode is entitled simply Tantra. Not simply Tantra, just Tantra. I mean, it's not like simply Tantra is not the name of the episode. It's just like I'm saying like it's just one word. Anyway, don't worry about it. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name, and it felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for the kids with no name.
What is it you're looking
These are
at?
transport points. These are all the...
Oh, I see. This stuff is your typical like
yeah,
doll.
these are the transport points. So these are the main.
But still, a doll doesn't. It's all like empty right here. Like when you look at it, like a acupuncture doll. You know that doll? It's like just there's none here. It's like just an empty area right here.
You mean like there are no points there?
No, there's a lot of points here. Like there's Ren 2 and stomach 30. Like there's a whole bunch right across the pubic bone.
Okay, well the pubic bone,
Yeah.
but not the genitals themselves.
No, the points are either like from here to here. The closer you are to the hands, the more chi, that like the faster the chi moves, and then when it's up here, it moves slower and it's deeper. I don't know why, but that's the deal.
So I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but it's really fascinating to hear you talk about it. The only thing I'm fixating on is why his head looks like a giant doll's head.
Yeah.
Because he's cute that way.
It looks terrifying.
I think it was drawn by lesbians. Well, I know it was drawn by lesbians because I know the person that had this commissioned, and I was talking to him about like it's. He said that when they first drew it, she was like huge, like she had lots of fat on her and stuff. And he was like, "Can we tone it down a little bit?"
So that particular one, that's acupuncture?
Yeah, those
points?
are all. They're called like the transport points, which are the ones that are closer, that have the most. Like you could kind of treat anybody with all of that. Like they all have specific things that they do.
Okay.
It's been a while since I studied it, so I don't remember all the names. But it's like the well points, the springs, the river, the sea, and then there's the influential points.
But if you look at it, like you know, people who do pressure points on hands or pressure points on feet, which is or in the head. But it's just really interesting because I have a whole bunch of research that shows that there's actually a whole bunch around the genitals, and those have been
Acupuncture points.
Yes.
But you think they're microsystems, right? Like reflexology is a microsystem. The auricular is a microsystem. It's not the channel system.
Right.
It's different.
Yes.
You could have one on your butt.
Yeah.
You could have one like right here.
Yeah.
So you know why I will never get tired of doing the show? Because I'll never get tired of watching these conversations, even though I have no idea what you guys are talking about. And we're recording, by the way. Okay. No, it's just like, this is really fascinating to me, and I'm hoping that there's enough geeks listening that will find that exchange as fascinating as I do.
Okay.
Even though I have no idea what the fuck you guys are talking about.
I'll try to keep it less esoteric.
Oh, no, I'll ask. I often warn the guests that I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions. Like, be prepared for that. And some of them are my own stupid questions, but mostly it's because I'm just like imagining, we're trying to explain this to somebody who might not have any experience whatsoever with what we're describing. So I want each of you to introduce yourselves so that the listeners can associate the name and background with a voice, and in like a sentence, tell me about sort of like I am Arash, and I am the host of Burner Podcast. I'm also a photographer, and that's pretty much it. And I do music videos. There you go.
My name is Shawn Roop, and I'm a teacher of Tantra. I own a business called Tantra Quest in San Diego. And I've been teaching Tantra for about 17 years. And I'm kind of rare in the field of Tantra because I really hold more of a traditional kind of approach towards Tantra, but taught in a very contemporary way. So a lot of people will look at me and go, "Oh, dude, you just look like a regular normal dude." Yeah. But the fact is that I'm actually holding like a very ancient lineage, and so lineage just meaning a long line of people who have wisdom.
So people would look at you and say, because you have a haircut?
Because I'm not wearing this big long beard, or I don't have a turban, and my name is Shawn, instead of all the other stuff that could be. Yeah. That I'm actually kind of in disguise, and kind of floating through the midst of the Western world in a way that will allow me to infiltrate and share this wisdom, because I think it really is appropriate and functional for most people. No,
I can dig that. I often joke that I'm a hippie with a hair gel. So,
nice.
it allows us to, walk. This is something that I think that what you're describing about yourself and about the presentation is something that's definitely a reflection of this current chapter of our culture that we're looking at. Like, when, just sidebarring here, like when cannabis, when we were moving towards trying to make that legal in our society, one of the concerns was that, we needed to make it less scary to Susie Homemaker, for lack of a better description, to show them like, hey, here's a medicine that you can use, and you don't have to get like fire ganja from like the dude with the dreadlocks at the beach. Like, it doesn't have to be scary. Like, this is something that is a part of all of us. So.
Right, you don't have to eat Oreo cookies all the time.
Yes. So if I saw you on the street,
of course. And I'm Amy Thornton. I am an acupuncturist, energy worker. I've dealt with Tantra on and off for probably about 10 years. I was a massage therapist before. I still do that a little bit. And I'm a student of the body and life. And I believe in transformation as a way of life.
Beautiful. And full disclosure, we're going to get into this. I had a session with Amy, and we'll get into some of that as examples of sort of what it's like from this end of it. So I guess I would say that up until I started hearing from you that you were taking this training, I just thought that Tantra, like my mind immediately went to tantric sex, which is what I think the majority of people's thoughts would go to if they're not familiar with the practice. So I guess I want to start with, what is Tantra? What is the? We're going to start with the elevator pitch, and then we'll get into like more details of it. If I just have like a couple of minutes real quick, and I'm running to my next meeting, like, how do you explain to me what Tantra is?
Oh God, I think you have a better elevator pitch.
The most confusing thing about Tantra is that its definition has lots of different meanings. So I'll give you the textbook definition. Tantra means to weave or loom things together. Okay. Tantra, 2 words. One means to extend or to pull, and the other one, tra, is to weave or to pull things into oneness. So.
And this is in what language?
This is in Sanskrit.
Okay.
And so the challenge with Tantra is that a lot of people do disassociate what the media has been offering, which is Tantra is sex. I like to say it's like New Age kink. It's like a New Age kink for people. And conscious sexuality or what other this kind of stuff. But Tantra as a whole is approaching so much more than just sexuality. It's actually a path to a life well lived. It's granting permission, even though we don't need it. It's kind of the push to live your life on your terms. And that's considered very dangerous to many people. But because then we're not very good citizens if we're just doing what the hell we want to do.
Yeah.
But Tantra is inviting people to do that. So it is a path to a life well lived. Another way I like to say it's like bringing heaven and earth together so there's no separation. So spirituality and all of humanity inside of a person, like all my humanness and all my spirituality can be just brought to one thing instead of being separated. Like I'm going to be really spiritual or I'm going to be like, oh, like really human. Like what if they just played together without having to have any division?
So how would that be different than if I was to go through, I don't know, traditional talk therapy?
Well, traditional talk therapy depends on the person that you'd go to, but the majority of traditional talk therapy has a Freudian spin on it, and the idea is that that the problems that stem from whatever you're experiencing in life usually have something to do with your relationship with your mother or your father exclusively. And so the idea is that you're starting with the most recent issue and then trying to cut back, and the hope is through traditional therapies that you'll get to the root 20 years later.
Yeah.
So Freud was once asked, what's the point of psychotherapy? He said the point of psychotherapy is to take extremely unhappy people to a normally unhappy state. So imagine there's a line in the middle, which is normal.
Great.
Which is normal.
You're all a bunch of miserable bastards, but you know.
Right. So he's just saying, I'm not going to get you to the normal line, to neutral. I'm going to get you just below it. And that's the point of psychotherapy. So all the pharmaceuticals that support people with psychological issues and those therapies are literally only bringing people to just below normal.
Yeah.
Whereas Tantra is, again...
We just need you to function enough to go to work.
And pay your taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And so, but Tantra is a very interesting thing because it doesn't even begin to like tell you where to go. It says, well, what's holding you back from being completely depressed or extremely happy?
Yeah.
Like, and then just play along the whole of something. Don't try to lock yourself into one little piece. And so that's a very big difference. And also the talk therapy usually has a place where someone's listening, and then there might be advice that's given, whereas a lot of the Tantra wisdom is more about extracting the wisdom from the person who's receiving the therapy.
Okay.
So if I was doing a session with you, you are the wisdom keeper, not me. All I want to do is invite you to your wisdom.
Okay. And so let's get into some of the history of it then. Where did the practice of Tantra start?
India. India originally.
And what was sort of like the initial? What was it born from? What if you can give us a sort of like a brief history of it?
It's interesting because there's this goes beyond written language. Tantra goes beyond a written language. So the problem is that that's a bit of a sketchy notion of where does it come from, because the oral tradition was basically where Tantra was held. Its heyday was in 500 AD, and that was at its most Renaissance peak time, and it was definitely a matriarchal system of wisdom that inspired people to their own empowerment beyond their station or their position or their caste. So the Rajas and kings of the land of India didn't like it. No likey. The reason why was because that was saying that even if you have nothing, you don't even have a pot to piss in, you're still a king or a queen in the eyes of Tantra.
And is it connected to Hinduism?
It actually predates Hinduism.
Okay. Interesting. So then so again, I guess like there is this general sort of feeling that it's kind of dances with Hinduism, but I guess that just basically has to do with, our minimal understanding of the culture.
Well, I think also what happened was it just, Hinduism, India is a birthplace of many, many religions. Zen, Hinduism, Buddhism, Tantra, Sufi, I can go on and on and on. So it seems like India just keeps birthing out these religions, but they can't stay there. Just like a child can't stay at home. It's got to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so, but Hinduism stayed. It didn't leave the house. It was like, it's the good kid that didn't leave.
Yeah.
So, and so the culture
until they get older, and now they're just fucking annoying.
Right. But Hinduism is a really...
Darren, clean your room. Fuck.
Exactly.
I'm sick of this shit.
True that. So there's a lot of challenges when it comes to Hinduism being kind of like a almost like a national religion because of it's really in a box around the idea that this isn't the place. There's something else called heaven or nirvana.
Yeah. Right.
And so Tantra is not that way. It says this is heaven. You're on it right now. And so why not live to the fullest extreme right here and right now?
Is Tantra a religion?
Well, yes.
You say yes?
It's also a science. It's also a philosophy.
Okay.
It's also an art form.
Because what you're describing kind of like feels to me like sort of like the dance between Taoism and Confucianism in Chinese culture.
It's good. Yes, it can be. In fact, a lot of times, even in modern Tantra, Taoism and Tantra are synonymous a lot of times in the conversation because people have made it to be the same thing. Like, Taoism has a huge sex teaching, but it's way more than sex. Yeah. But the West will go, Taoism, that's all about holding your seed and having life force. Yeah. Well, so Tantra has the same gig going down. Like there's a lot more going on.
And do we know how it made its way to the West?
Tantra went dormant after a jihad came through India and wiped out many of the tantric priestesses who were holding all of the wisdom. And they were so empowered they didn't have a problem like putting their own neck on the sword because death wasn't their worst concern. They were living their life as greatly as possible up to the last second. So death wasn't their demon, if you will. Yeah. Because remember I said heaven's already here, so there's no fear of what's after. Or if there is an after, doesn't matter. But everything's right now. So what happened was the Buddhist monks were watching this huge bloodbath that was going on in India. So what they did is we got to save this because this is going away. Now they had just created Sanskrit, which was one of the first written languages. And so they dropped off the mountains, started gathering these women with their kung fu people behind them and kind of extracted them like some sort of special ops and took them into a place and basically for 100 years started to write down all of their wisdom so that there was now a written log of their wisdom. Right. Because the teachers were being lost so quickly.
Wow, fascinating. Okay.
So then what happens is then the Buddhists hold on to Tantra. So now you get Tantra Buddhism, which is Tibetan Tantra. This is where it changes. It changes from this real free-formed, radical, rebellious, absolute empowering system into this really disciplined, very, very celibate experience of what Tantra is. They were taking all of the teachings, but they're monks, so they can't do a lot of the things that they used to work. So they adapted it. Yeah. They adapted it. So now all of a sudden Tantric Buddhism is kept within Buddhism. Yeah. And so that feminine teaching got lost for a while. It stayed underground. Well, until it said that around the 50s it started to come out, and it wasn't until the invention of the pill that Tantra reemerged, because then women could actually practice these practices without the fear of becoming pregnant.
Wow. So how did those teachings get rediscovered if they were pushed so far underground?
Like most esoteric systems, a lot of people don't realize this. They're actually available to a lot easier than people think, but they're just hidden. You know, you have to go to the right place and knock on the door the right way, basically. Have the right handshake or whatever. Right. But then, they kind of it blew out, and there was a man named Osho, also known as Bhagwan Rajneesh, and he was one of the main bringers to the West what is now Tantra, for what a lot of people see as Tantra.
That's fascinating. So the chakra system, that's something that was from tantric practice, predating, I don't know, Hinduism and other places that I think generally has been thought to be where we think all that comes from. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, it's hard to say that because we have cave paintings that show the chakras. So I don't know. Are the aliens maybe? I don't know.
Sure.
I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm going to go there because I don't know. I really cannot answer you. You're asking a question that, like scientists will try to figure out, and historians will try to figure out, anthropologists will try to figure out. But a tantrika would be like, doesn't matter. It just is.
It could have all been discovered simultaneously in many different places because it's there in the body. So people that can feel into that can access it.
Because whether you're in a Chinese system or a Christian system or a Judaic system, this number 7 in the body is there, like the tree of life, Jacob's ladder, which is the Catholic version of the chakras, the meridian systems, like all this stuff. There's this access of these parts in the body that are there.
Yeah, it's just different languages, and that's
right.
Yeah, it's one of the 750. I've talked about this multiple times on this show. Like one of the 750, that number changes every time too. Epiphanies that I had after my first DMT trip was like, oh, all the religions got it right. They're just describing it differently, using different cultural contexts to describe the same thing that we're observing about the nature of reality.
See, I see it's like this. Like there's a Band-Aid, and then there's a Cure-Aid, and then there's a, there's all kinds of different names for the same item. A Band-Aid is a Band-Aid is a Band-Aid. But then there's just different packaging that it goes in. And so all the religions seem to have some certain primers that are exactly the same. And that's the thing that pulls it all together. But it's the costume that it wears that becomes the problem. So you asked if Tantra is a religion. I would say it's not a capital R religion. Because it's not saying that you have to invoke Ganesh or Shiva or Lakshmi to receive the boons or the information or the blessings of that particular deity. Because what it says is those deities actually are you.
Yeah.
You are that deity. And so by invoking that deity, it's invoking that part in you. So in other words, there's nothing outside of you that's higher than you. You are the same.
Yeah.
Which is very different than Hinduism, where you have to go do a puja or a ceremony to release things before you get the boon and all this other kind of stuff, like rituals and practices, and whereas Tantra doesn't have the need for that.
Yeah, it's a religion. I've always sort of described it as it's the bureaucracy that gets in the way of spirituality, depending on sort of what your vision of it is. But then again, a lot of people really need that bureaucracy. Like they feel like they do. Need somebody to help them navigate. And some bureaucracies are a much bigger mess, like Catholicism. But and then you have other ones that are sort of a little more direct.
What do you mean?
More offices, It could be argued that it's beneficial to have some bureaucracy. And maybe sometimes it can be argued that, once you've sort of surpassed certain experiences, you want less bureaucracy. You want to just go up to the boss's office and walk right in and start communicating directly.
Or you want to be the boss.
Right.
We are the boss.
Start your own business.
Entrepreneurship.
I like the idea that I'm God.
Entrepreneurial spirituality.
And then if I'm God, you're God, everyone's God. And then that forces me, I think, in a way to be more compassionate and understanding to see that.
This totally side observation, because this is one of the things that really fascinates me is that we have these spiritual practices, and then we have people who consider themselves to be very logical, scientific people who are maybe historically dismissive of certain spiritual practices. And then eventually you start to see certain scientific discoveries start to come align with this other thing. Yeah. And one of those things that you just described right now is interesting is that spiritually speaking, it makes sense. We're all God and drag. You're me, I'm you, you're me. Just interacting with different versions of myself. So of course, if I'm showing you compassion and being kind to you, that makes me feel good because you're me. So spiritually speaking, it's that. But then now we have more and more psychological evidence that keeps finding when you do charity work, you feel happier. Your focus goes up, your energy goes up, you feel better. So we are starting to measure these kinds of things. And yet there's, your great grandfather, great grandma saying I've been telling you that since you were a kid and you're not listening. And it feels like a lot of what's happening right now in the world is we're starting to rediscover some of this wisdom that we, as a culture, as a society, were a bit dismissive of. But now it's oh, look, it seems to be there is some evidence to it. Some of it's come back. Maybe we just didn't have the tools to measure what it used to be. So I'm wondering if like what some of your experience, like, is that something that you guys think about? Is that something that you're just basically like you're diving into? Is it even a thought process about the dance between spirituality and science and where it's all going?
Yes. Yes, because like I said, Tantra is also science. But for me, when I think about that, I'm not interested in trying to prove which one's right and which one's wrong. I'm just interested in the conversation that they're both having. And even if they're in dichotomous nature to how they're talking about something, I'm still interested in that conversation. Yeah. Because for me as a person, it's how I will receive and be with that information rather than having someone else tell me how to do it. So a capital R religion will tell me how to do it. Science will even tell me how to do it. And I'm just saying, I have my own innate truth and experience inside of me, and I can take information that's offered to me and do what I want to do with it. For instance, I broke a toe once, and really bad. It was like just really slammed, horrible thing. And what I was able to do was go and get the science to give me an x-ray of it and a doctor to tell me what they think I should do with it. But then I took that and I used my mind and my own spiritual beliefs to actually take the picture that I saw and put the puzzles back together. And within 3 days, it was fine.
You healed your toe?
Yes.
That's interesting.
And, but we have this ability, and the only thing that keeps us from that is the belief that that there's something better that knows better. So if I listened to the doctor, I would have been laid up for a month.
Right. Now, and full disclosure, my general thought process is, I think we are getting more and more to that place, scientifically speaking, but our ability to manifest reality, I think we've like barely scratched the surface of it as a society. Yes. So that's where I'm at personally. Yeah. However, the question that one of our more skeptic friends would ask in a situation like this would be, what about examples of XYZ people who are not like giving medication to their kids and kids end up like dying?
I'm really not interested in arguing with those people. I find that people that are skeptics tend to be closed-minded generally, and I'm not going to say all of them, but I'm not going to argue with somebody who's already chosen to not look at something with an open mind. And they've said, I use reason, capital R reason, this is the way things are, science this, science that, and for me, I just don't have the energy to engage with that. So they can have those conversations with each other and jerk each other off and be like, woo, this is great, and that's cool. And I'm going to be busy making myself a better person and having real interactions with real people and not engaging in that. So when you're asking, like, do I care that the science is catching up? No, because I know it already. I've had too many experiences in my life to say that these things don't exist or that they don't matter. They do. That being said, I do have a very logical scientific mind, and I do struggle with, like, I don't want to be perceived as that hippie that's like, woo, look at this science. It's not really real science, and that it's proving all of our points. And, it's so easy on Facebook. You see, like, oh, science says cats are doing this. And it's like, well, if you understand research, like, it's not really saying that. It's just somebody saying that it's saying it. So it's, I don't know. It's a big mess. But that's where I choose to just not engage with it because I find that it wastes my energy, and I don't see the point of it. It's like acupuncture. People are like, well, I don't believe in this. I'm like, okay, that's cool. That's cool. I don't need you to be here.
No, I'm fully in the same boat. I'm wondering, though, what your thought is on, well, that answers the first part of the question. The second part, though, what is your thought process when you do see that there are people that could, like, do you look at situations where it's like, okay, how do you decide where somebody should, let's say it's yourself. How do you decide you're in a situation where, like, you can heal something using a spiritual approach versus something where, you know what, I got to go to the doctor because this is not working.
So I'm actually a big proponent of Western medicine in general. As an acupuncturist, I get many people that come to me that refuse to use Western medicine. And I am like, this is your heart. This is a thing that you need to live. If you have cancer, if I had cancer, you better believe that I'm going to use Western medicine first because cancer moves fast and Western medicine will kick its ass fast. And then I'm going to go and use the holistic energy, all of that stuff to help myself recover and figure out, like, maybe why did I get cancer in the first place? There's also a thing with, like, that belief system, like, did I create this cancer in my life? And I feel like what happens is a lot of people will get cancer and then people will be like, oh, you must have unresolved anger. And I think Shawn and I might disagree on this, that I think that's pretty messed up. In fact, I know we have because we've had a conversation about this, to say to somebody, like, this is your fault. Maybe it is, but there's a time and a place to do that. And also maybe it's not your job to do that.
Victim blaming.
Yeah, it's like victim blaming, but then, and I think what I've learned in my tantric classes is that actually you need to take responsibility for everything in your life, and then you can come from an empowered place to fix it. But, at the point where you have cancer and it's moving through your body, that maybe isn't quite the right time to do it, because like you might die.
Yeah.
And, then you should, you can regroup after you take care of it.
Like if you've got you have your wedding coming up and you're like all of a sudden trying to work out 7 hours a day to fit into your wedding dress, like it's a little late. Maybe you should have started that a little bit earlier.
Right. Or accept your body and,
sure. Get a different wedding dress.
Yeah, just be where you're at. Be where you're at and be okay with that.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I think again, like that makes a lot of sense to me. The idea that I guess what it really comes down to is that one idea doesn't necessarily negate the other. It's not to say that because this works, then this can't.
Right.
Both of them can coexist. And I think that's where people that do enjoy arguing versus people that are asking questions, the people that do enjoy arguing do come from that angle where they feel like it's got to be one or the other. It can't be both at the same time.
Yeah, closed-mindedness.
It reminds me of a story. There was a story of a guy who went to a mantra teacher, basically someone who offers chants. And he had a really rare disease. And he had already been working with medicine and not having luck. And he was really not living a really productive life and was really fucked up with this situation that he's in. So he goes to this teacher and asks for a healing mantra. So the teacher studies through, figures out his stuff, and goes, "Yep, you got it. Here it is," and gives it to him.
Yeah.
And he says, "But you have to do this mantra," which was a pretty long mantra, 1,008 times a day. And he says, "Wow." He says, "Okay, yeah, I'm down, like because I'm ready to do this. Like I am really, really ready for this." So he does. And for months, he does it every single day. It almost takes him all day to do. But that's his thing. And he's starting to he's really optimistic about the experience. Well, in that time, the teacher was looking through the paper and found an article about this amazing study that was going on, and they needed participants because it's such a rare disease, and they're having really great results, but they need more people to be part of this study. So he clips it out and he sends it to the student, and the student gets really pissed off, comes rushing over, knocks on the door, and he says, "I thought you would trust me, and the mantra you gave me would offer me, bestow upon me the health that I've been looking for." And he goes, "No, the mantra is about opening the doors to allow wisdom to come in so we can deal with it." And it worked. Yeah. Here it is. Yeah. So, but that sometimes we think it's supposed to look a certain way as a human being. And then if it doesn't look that way, then it's like, but that's not it yet, because I expect it to look like this. And I think that's where the problem comes in.
I'm going to butcher this example.
Great.
But I'm going to absolutely fucking butcher it. But was it a story like it's a guy who's the town starts flooding.
Oh yeah, I got it.
You've heard this one. You already know which one this is, right?
Yeah.
And I think first a boat comes by and says, "Here, I'm going to throw this rope to you. Come climb in the boat. You're flooding. You're going to drown." Yeah. And he says, "Nope, I've got faith in God. God is going to save me." And then next, a helicopter comes and they're like, "Hey, come on up here. We're going to save you. Get out of here." He's like, "Nope, I got faith in God. God is going to save me." And then finally, a ship comes by and they try to throw him. It's like, "Just get on the ship. You're going to drown. You're going to die." And at this point, water's all the way up to his neck. He's almost done. His house is gone. And he's like, "Nope, I've got faith in God. God is going to save me." And then he drowns and he dies and he arrives at the pearly gates. He goes to heaven. And goes up to God, and he's like, "What the fuck?" And obviously butchering it. This is the Arash version. And the Arash version, he curses.
What the fuck version?
Yeah, he's like, "What the fuck, God? I thought I had faith in you. You're supposed to save me." He's like, "I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. I sent you a ship. What the fuck else do you want?"
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Love
right.
that.
Me too.
It's the same different angles.
Yeah. So when it comes to that kind of stuff around what science is offering and what faith can offer me, it still comes down to the place of am I going to listen to myself only?
Yeah.
Am I going to listen to someone else only? Or am I going to take all that's available to me and work with that?
Right.
And so if I get a cold, the first thing I'm going to do is look at where's the emotional component. My body's knocking on the door. What do I need to know about this? And then I'll call someone like Amy and go, "I got a cold right now. Can you help? Can you do an acupuncture series on me and help me with that? Or can you recommend some herbs or whatever?" So in other words, it's not just about one thing or the other. It's about saying yes to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And that's about me really not putting faith into one system only. And I think that's the main key.
putting all your eggs in one basket has, and I guess that's something that we have access to in the modern age because, we have the internet and we have communities where we can choose to, like, it used to be seen as like a very frowned upon thing. I remember, like, to be a buffet line Catholic, for example, where you just pick and choose the things you like. Whereas now it feels like, you can pull up many different disciplines and thought processes and get whatever one works for you. And now we have sort of like this, for lack of a better description, a hodgepodge of spirituality that's happening. And when I first started to explore some of this, I remember thinking like, well, this is lame. I can just like pick whatever I want. But the more I started to do it, I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. I can pick whatever I want.
Right.
That's exactly what's happening with Tantra.
Yeah.
That's exactly what the West has done. Sex stuff? Cool. I'll take that. Oh, personal empowerment? No, fuck that. So I'll just keep the sex stuff. It's juicy. And because where else do people get that kind of information? And I think that's one of the problems that's happened. And I actually did a paper when I was in stats class, when I was in college, and I wanted to find out in San Francisco how many potential opportunities were there for a person to explore something spiritual on a given day. Because I was hearing this term that was called spiritual window shopping. And in the Bay Area, there was on a daily basis, there was upwards to 180 experiences a person could experience around spirituality.
Wow.
And so the question is like, okay, if that's true, then how much, like you don't have to commit to anything. You just go, I'll be a Hindu today. Oh, I'm going to be a Scientologist. Oh, you could just keep flipping through a whole week and just like, I'm totally spiritual.
Yeah.
And you know what? And our society has said, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
And so
finally. Because I feel like maybe there was a time that we were saying that's not okay because we were buying into the propaganda of the church.
Well, because they need you to put money on the tithes.
Yeah.
You give your tithes to the plate.
Yeah.
You know? So they need your dedication. It can't be given to the Scientologists and to them because that's going to split your money up.
I need you to buy the gold membership of the multi-level marketing experiment here.
That's right.
And then bring all your friends, and then we're going to buy the platinum membership.
But also it propagates that particular wisdom or that particular system. If I'm a really, really devout whatever, I'm going to sell that to the rest of the world. And that really works. But if I'm on the fence, it's like, I've done Buddhism, I've done Zen.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
Done.
Get that designation that I'm spiritual, not religious. Like that used to be a thing that you would see on a lot of OkCupid profiles for a while.
Right.
It's like kind of means you're a little new agey, that you're like you're probably into like a little Buddhism, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and like maybe you did Tantra once. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that one.
So, when did Tantra come into your life, Shawn?
It was 1999. And I was in a dentist's office, and I was looking in Vanity Fair. And there was an article about Sting and his wife Trudy, and it was about the 8-hour sex thing. And
yeah, that's exactly where my mind went.
And I was down with that. I was like, I want to learn that. And,
so it was the sex that first brought you.
Oh, totally, yeah. And so back then I went and typed into the computer because I didn't have Google back then. It was AOL. So I was like on AOL and put Tantra in, and what it basically looked like, I was blown away because what they were talking about and what I saw on the internet were two totally different things. Yeah. Because what they were talking about was this really connected, yogic, spiritual, sexual experience of taking like earth and relationship and spirituality and just throwing it all together. Well, when I was looking online, it just basically looked like prostitution. Yeah. And I was like, wow, maybe I'm missing something. And so I looked for the most legit person I could find, like the one that didn't have all the the business showing. And I was like, well, someone who was that looked somewhat like they actually could teach me something instead of just giving me a hand job or something. And but what happened was
hand job's still welcome.
Totally. That's what's gonna happen. But I was kind of I was kind of down. Like I was like, if I want a hand job, I can do that. But I was like, well, give me a hand job, but teach me something about it. Give me the skills so I know what to do and how to do this instead of just do something to me. I wanted to learn something. That was the big difference. I didn't want just someone to go, I'm going to lay there, I'm going to be quiet, and something's going to happen to me. I wanted someone to unfold something. I wanted to learn and remember. That's honestly, and I didn't know that back then, but that's what I really wanted. Yeah. So I did find someone, and honestly, I wanted to learn how to give to a woman.
Yeah.
So I was like, will you help me learn how to give to a woman? She's like, yeah, sure. It's called goddess worship. And what you're going to do is, here's all the things you have to do beforehand, because I booked the session like 3 weeks in advance. And I'm looking at this stuff, I'm like, okay, well, I'll do my homework. And I was a really good student. Like, I did my breath practice, and I did my mantra practice, and I was doing all this stuff. And then when I got there, I was terrified, like, what's going to happen? Yeah. And so she goes, okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to lay over on my back, and I just want you to massage me. I'm like, okay. So I'm thinking it's a test, right? So I'm like, like using breath practice and sound, and I'm being conscious with my touch. And she like just turns over and she's like, okay, that's done. And I'm like, what? She goes, no, that's good. And I'm like, okay, what? And she's like, well, why are you here? And I said, to learn how to give to a woman. She goes, I know, but why are you really here? And I said, to learn Tantra. She goes, no, why are you here? I said, I don't know. Why am I here? She goes, well, how are you receiving? And I'm like, nope, that's not why I'm here. I'm not here to receive. I'm going to learn to get here to give. And she goes, nah, I think we found it. Yeah. You're here to learn how to receive. And then she really zinged me. She said, this was my first teaching of Tantra. If you give, you're in control. And if you receive, you're in surrender. Yeah. And that fucking blew my mind. That was a life changer. The next thing was, do you have a relationship with yourself? I was like, what? Like that was just not a concept I had. It was always about another person, very people-pleasing and codependent. So Tantra broke me open with 2 simple teachings that literally changed how I approach life. And I could not reject what I was given. Wow. Yeah. So where I was hoping to go was to learn how to like give a woman an orgasm. I walked away with how to have a relationship with myself. That was a pretty big upgrade. Yeah. That's beautiful. Amy, how did it come to your life?
I think that maybe back in about 2004, 2005 was the first couple of years of me being a massage therapist. A woman that I worked with, Natalie, she invited me to this place in Escondido called the Goddess Studio. And it's just where women kind of get together and do like pagan rituals and all kinds of stuff. And it was really the first time I'd ever experienced anything like that. And I dug it. It was cool. It was like ritual, awesome, and being connected. And I would almost always be the youngest person there, which is the story of me being in a lot of these groups for a very long time. And I met a woman named Kypris there, and she was just like, I do this tantric stuff. I have this partner. We do pujas, and I'm like, what is that? And I lived in North County at the time, and she was down in San Diego, and I just came to one. And there's different levels of pujas, and you don't see a lot of pujas in San Diego at this time, or maybe I'm missing out on it.
What is a puja?
So in my mind, a puja, I think it means worship, correct? Right?
It's a ritualistic devotion.
Right. And so, but what it looks like is you show up in these groups. Typically the ones I went to, you would kind of be a single person, or maybe you'd have partners, but you would switch partners and you would do practices with each other. And those practices would be something like eye gazing, looking at your partner, just looking in their eyes, staring at somebody's face and looking at all the pieces of the face and just finding the beauty and just looking at it individually and then putting it together, really practicing presence, and then also doing a lot of energy moving tools. So, you're going to sit with 2 people together. There's a position called Yab Yum, which is typically where a male is sitting cross-legged and the female has got her legs kind of over his legs. And then
sitting on his lap.
Sitting on his lap, yeah, sorry. And so you would breathe together, maybe eye gaze, and then you would, with your mind, use running energy between your hearts, and then maybe down through the yoni and lingam, which is the penis and vagina. Reverse that. And then you would kind of run the energy back and forth. And so for me, it was this really cool way to take stuff that I had learned in massage school, which was energy work, which when I first learned it, I was like, this stuff is stupid. But then I started seeing like, oh no, I can feel this thing here, and so can this other person, and so can this other person. Like, what is that? And so, it was really practicing presence and learning all these interesting techniques. And what it, in that moment, really showed me was that everyone has a beauty, whether I'm physically attracted to them or not, that I can see and tap into. And if I just take the time and space, I can be with myself and be with those other people. So it's a lot of ritual, and you get to meet people, and it can be very exciting. You can also cry. I mean, all kinds of stuff comes up. Just sitting and staring at somebody in their eyes can make a lot of people cry because we don't do it. It's really weird in our culture. to stare at somebody in their face.
Yeah. I read recently. I've not actually tried this yet, but like you can, if you do eye gazing for like 10 minutes or so, like you can actually start having a psychedelic experience from it. Did I just read that wrong? Make that up?
I guess it depends on your definition of psychedelic.
Yeah, and it also depends on the depth of the person's going. So what's going on there is that there's this in the pituitary. There's this pineal gland. There's an opportunity to actually just drop a little bit of DMT, just the smallest dose. And what you can do is through gazing, you can actually start to massage that area by focusing without blinking. And what it does is it keeps the pressure of the eyes up on that, so that when you finally relax your eyes, it drops this DMT in. And so that's one of the ways that you can do that. And through lovemaking, you can actually break the fight or flight into this really relaxed state.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a microdose. It's not enough to really like get you high, but it's enough to make you completely drop any of that. I have to pay a bill. I have to do something. I have to check my email. I have to eat. Like all that stuff relaxes, and you kind of hit into this timeless zone that people call Tantra time, where there's no beginning, no end. It just like is this spaciousness, and you're like, that's 8 hours of sex. Like, it's not 8 hours of sex where people are just like pounding it. It's literally connection for like this extended period of time that grows and builds upon itself.
I think with no agenda too.
Right,
That's
no
a
agenda.
really important part.
No goals, no agendas.
Right. It's just
It's constantly
connection.
a journey to take together.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see, I'm wondering if this is the chicken or the egg situation, where Tantra can be such a threat to traditional Western religions, because Western religions have spent so much time demonizing sex. And here is this practice, this thought process that is really focused on sexual energy being the divine, being God, being where you feel closest to God and to each other. And what you guys are describing is just making me think. Like, I wonder if that came as a result of we need to get rid of that thing, or, oh, wait a minute, that thing's all about sex. We need to get rid. Like, which one sort of came first? But it does very much go counter to a lot of how the majority of us in the world have been socialized, which has been like, the whole no sex thing, no sex before marriage. Then when you have sex, you better not enjoy it.
Yeah, just the concept of sin. Which I don't believe in personally, but
yeah, well, it's interesting. It's almost like even making me think about how the bureaucracy thing. Like, in order to further solidify the strength of this bureaucracy, we need to take you further away from the divine. And how do we do that? By demonizing the practice, that which brings you closest to the divine, which would be the sexual energy.
To understand tantric sexuality requires you to have a redefinition of sex. Like, you literally have to break all the crap that's been fed so that you can have the understanding of that particular system's approach to it. So one of the reasons why Tantra offers sex as a practice is because it's an idea that there's these funnels that sit on the top of our head, and they open up the moment we start to engage our sexual energy. And through that, there's an ability to catch the drippings of wisdom from the universe through our sexuality, which basically means we up-level and upgrade who we are through sex.
Yeah.
Like the questions we have that are universal can be answered through that pleasurable act. So it gets you to a no-minded state, to the place where you're receptive to receive stuff. And I think that's one of the greatest things, because people sit there and go, well, I meditate to no-mindedness. Like, that's fucking hard, man. They say that if you can keep a meditation no-minded for 30 seconds, you will become enlightened. That's how crazy our minds are. Okay? So the idea is, like, through great states of pleasure, like when I'm about to like have an orgasm, fuck it. I don't care if a nuke's going off. Like, I'm good. Like, things are flowing and I'm very, very okay. I'm not thinking about things. And so the idea is how to get someone to that place, peak them there, and then extend that without having to drop back down or to release that. Just to literally float and fly in that area.
Right.
That's Tantra. And it does bring great connection, and it does bring a sense of spirituality, and it does bring a sense of empowerment. to the individual. And that goes against the grain with a lot of systems. And the systems know like that approach. So Tantra has been villainized by yogis, by religions, by politics, by other esoteric systems. Like Tantra has been beat down and said that it's a very dangerous path and that no one should be practicing that because it brings people back to themselves.
Yeah. And I'm not asking which is the correct path, but how do monogamy and polyamory or consensual non-monogamy play with Tantra?
How do they play with Tantra?
You're using very modern terms.
Sure.
And so Tantra says yes to everything. Okay, it just says yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there an ideal? Are we looking for a soulmate?
Are you?
I don't know.
Right? So that's the same as the listener. The question wouldn't be is what do I think? It's what do you think? Tantra is going to continue to bring it back to the person, not to tell a person what's better, what's worse, what's right, what's wrong. Right. It basically brings it back to the question to the person who's experiencing that. Okay, so if Tantra just says yes to everything, which by the way takes great responsibility. It seems really fun and kind of like woohoo, but it's an ass kicker. Yeah, that there is something there. So I have the ability to love endlessly. There's no end to that love. I could be called Jesus at that point because what the hell is the difference? Yeah, Jesus loves everyone. He's kind of poly. Yeah, and everyone loves him. Yeah, totally poly.
He's got a great wine party trick.
Krishna has like a whole bunch of wives, right? Everyone thinks about Radha. She's married too, so they're poly. Yeah. I can go on and on with this kind of stuff. So the problem that comes down to this is like, what is monogamy and what was it created for? So if someone wants to have a deep, committed, locked-in relationship where it's just about those two people, Tantra say yes to that. That's great. Mm-hmm. But if I'm doing it out of obligation, if I'm doing it out of social standards, if I'm doing it for my family, if I'm doing it for values, yeah, then is it really me or is it me following the path that someone else has laid out for me? So Tantra is only going to reveal who a person really is. Yeah. So, like, I have a friend who does Tantra who's very, very successful and teaches like people how to have non-monogamous relationships. The problem is she's telling people how to do it. Yeah. And that doesn't fit with everyone. So there was a sea of unsuccessful experiences with people because the way she was offering it doesn't mean that's the way everyone should offer it. Mm-hmm. So Tantra offers this. If you see that there's a model or example and you're asked to follow it, reject it immediately. Mm. Follow your path.
It's like a nonstop revolution.
It is the rebel path.
I will say just on a practical level, if you are connecting with people and you're realizing that, we're all one and you're feeling energy, Tantra, in the way that it can be practiced, lends itself to polyamory quite easily, right? So, and you'll find, I think, especially in San Diego, I can't speak to other places, that there is quite a lot of crossover between poly communities and Tantra communities.
I can speak to that nationally and internationally, if that's interest.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like, I don't know, that free love thing in a way, right? It's like, oh, well, we're all getting along together. Yes. And yeah, so if I can connect with this one person and I'm God and they're God, then why can't I connect with all these other people? So I don't know that like the technical definition of Tantra fits into it, but...
So Tantra will say yes to polyamory. That doesn't mean polyamory will say yes to Tantra, which is very interesting. I could say that about pretty much everything. Tantra will say yes to everything, but that doesn't mean everything will say yes to Tantra. Yeah. So there's actually a poly community here in San Diego who reject and completely say no spirituality, no Tantra. Mm. This is a poly group that has nothing to do with those aspects. And I'm like, really? Why? Yeah. That's so crazy. And it's because they're basically burned on the spiritual thing. Yeah. So they're trying to experience poly without that spiritual element because a lot of times poly people are going into depth, into freedom, into connection, and all this kind of stuff, which Tantra gives a lot of roadmap for how to explore.
Yeah, and that roadmap is beautiful, and there are a lot of poly people that don't have the roadmap, or they have a certain book that they've gone to. Tantra isn't easy, and I think poly isn't easy for a lot of people.
It's relationship in the fire.
Yeah, it's really going at like what's actually happening here, and who am I, and what am I showing up with, and what's getting in the way of me showing up fully, and being vulnerable and being authentic. And living an expressed life. And I think poly does that in a lot of ways, and Tantra definitely has like a mechanism to deal with that as well. So that's another way in which I see that they work really well together. I also think Tantra and BDSM works really well together because the presence and the focus and surrender, all of those pieces are beautiful together. And that energy, like BDSM practices, like when you're in it as an exchange, that you're really doing something with the person you're focusing. We don't get that a lot in the rest of our life. Like your regular everyday sex is really not that. Where with BDSM and Tantra, it's like I've slowed down. I'm looking at this person. I'm talking with them. It's what do they want? What do they need? What do I want? What do I need? Rather than like, oh, this prescribed thing. Oh, this is what we do. We get together and we bang. Right? So it's the slowing down and checking in and feeling into what's actually happening in that moment. And if that is like, you're looking at me and that's making me cry right now, and we're not going to have sex, that's what's happening right now. And that's been a really good lesson for me in particular, because I like to think of myself in a certain way that like, oh yeah, I want to have sex all the time.
Down,
it's
right?
great. I'm down. Like I'm cool. I'm that chick, right? You know, and sometimes I'm not that chick. And to have the process there and that space that I have intentionally created over years of my life to be able to do that, to even check in and know that, man, I feel like crying right now, and that's what's going to happen, and it's not going to be the thing I planned on, and it's not going to look pretty, and I'm not going to be the person that I think I am, but I actually am going to be the person that I am right now, is amazing and beautiful and worth it. But not easy. It's easier in some ways. It's the shortcut to just be like, nope, I'm going to do this anyway, and this is what's happening. Right, but to actually tap into what's really happening is, I think, the secret to life, really. That honesty and that truth. And that's how you show up authentically. That's how you show up vulnerably, is by actually tapping in. Which
can lend to a lot of success if one was going to experience multiple relationships.
I personally, this is like really illuminating a lot of things from my own personal experiences as well, because that's what I always felt like I've interacted with certain parts of the polyamory community, not the whole. I'm not going to say everybody's the same, but that's been the challenge that I experienced a lot of time when I'm having these conversations with people about like somebody that I might date. I'm like, hey, this is something that I'm interested in exploring. And I find that I'm coming at it from a more spiritual angle. And a lot of times the other person isn't, because I feel like it's become kind of trendy to have open relationships in 2016 United States. It's the new thing. I feel like I'm seeing more people opening up than ever before. Maybe because also we live in Southern California. But it seems like they don't know why they're doing it. A lot of like couples that are opening up in this particular year, I feel like they're just kind of like, I'm interested in sex. I'm interested in some exploration. They don't know where they're going with it yet. Whereas like for me personally, it came the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It came from the spiritual angle. But it's interesting.
Burner Podcast.
Hey, so super quick little break. The holidays are here, and a lot of us are probably going to gain some unwanted weight. It's the normal way things go. And this is technically not like a burner community announcement, but I just happen to have had multiple people ask me about fitness recently, and I thought, hey, fuck it, let's share about it on the show. If you're looking for a fun way to burn off some of those calories, do look into November Project. I attend every Monday and Wednesday mornings, and there's a bunch of other burners that go. November Project is a totally free, volunteer-led fitness movement with chapters in like 23 cities around the United States, and a couple even outside of our borders. We meet up at 6:29 a.m., have a quick warm-up and hugs and laughter, and then we get our sweat on for about like the next 30 minutes. The exercises will be something like, I don't know, the leads will throw a deck of cards on the ground and you draw one. And if you pick a face card, you might have to run down the hill and do 10 push-ups and run back up. They put a lot of energy into making it fun and different. It's a wonderful community. No one's selling you anything, and all levels are welcome. People are absolutely not judgmental, and not everyone is a hardcore athlete. When I started a couple of years ago, I was very suspicious, in fact, that the movement might have had burner roots due to all the hugging. So give it a shot. Visit november-project.com to see if there's a chapter in your city. And if there isn't, maybe you can start one. Hey. Okay, well, let's get back to Shawn and Amy.
Welcome home.
Amy, when did you decide that you're ready to have, like, training and you're interested in being a counselor?
I have wanted to take Shawn's course. I mean, I've known Shawn, what did you say, 2008, 2009? And I don't know, when did you start offering the trainings?
Oh, back in 2003.
Okay, so before I knew you. So I think every time Shawn had offered it, I was like, oh, that's a thing I want to do. But obviously I didn't want to do it that much because it didn't happen. So I just did it finally in 2016 because I'm planning on leaving San Diego. And I'm like, you know what? While I'm here, I want to get all of the things that San Diego has to offer, and one of those things is Shawn. And I've done a lot of work with Shawn, one-on-one individual sessions and some pujas and talks and things. And I know that...
So you'd continue to explore Tantra on your own, but this course that Shawn offers, which we're going to get into in just a second.
Right. So when I think of Shawn, I think of him as a powerful healer. And I know, and I don't want to speak for you, but I know you don't consider yourself a healer. But for me, that's how it shows up in my life. Shawn is able to hold a space and listen and reflect back, and then combine energy work and body touch and all of these different things to help me break through when I'm really stuck somewhere, and to just illuminate things where I probably already knew it. And I'm not saying Shawn's sitting there telling me, well, there's times where you definitely have told me things and I'm like, no. And then later I'm like, oh yeah, you know what? I was really prostituting myself and that does suck. And I don't like that. To be clear, not actual prostitution, just the concept of it. So yeah.
We've said much worse shit on this show.
I'm just mean for like the general public.
Sure, yeah.
The archetypical nature.
Like anyone that's
Amy is not offering you sex for money, so you know.
So Shawn was offering it, timing seemed right, I felt really called to do it, and then interestingly enough, my cat got cancer, and I knew that I was going to have to show up to this class at the time that that this happened, and it was like day one of this class, and I waited a couple days, and then I had to put the cat down. I think it was like day 2 or day 3. But I knew that he was going to go during the time of this class. And I can say that this is how I try to live my life. You know, if something sounds like the right thing and it feels right and I feel called to do it, then that's how I know it's a thing I'm going to do. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It can be really hard. But I'm really glad that I was there in that class and practicing presence and learning things and honestly having a distraction, and also being with other people that have decided to show up in life in an empowered and authentic way, so that I felt held, and I feel like it was all divine timing with my kitty.
He died literally on the first day of class.
Third day.
Yeah.
I was actually going to put him down on the first day, but I was like, Shawn just said, I don't see how you can come on the same day that you have to put down your 16-year-old cat.
With a bunch of people you don't know.
Yeah, I literally knew nobody in there, and so yeah, it's so I chose to wait a little bit, which I felt a little guilty about, but you know, it all worked out, so I'm really glad that I was there with that. Yeah.
Shawn, when did you begin to offer this course? You said 2003?
Yeah, the first training I offered was with my partner at the time, who had been teaching this type of stuff before, and I was wanting to take her class, and I'm like, yeah, I'll just I'll take the class. I'll be like your assistant, and she's like, oh, okay. But NLP, could you just like offer like a little NLP, like maybe on day one? Like maybe just in the very beginning, like you have some NLP that will work really well if you could just do that.
Neurolinguistic programming?
Programming. And so I'm like, okay, sure. I'll do that. So I'm like, yeah. So I like write a little lesson plan for a little 3-hour thing, and I do that. And then there's lunch. And then so I'm like, after the end of lunch, I go, oh, that was great. She's like, yeah, that was really, really good. They're really responding well to you. And so then we eat lunch, and so we come back, and she's like, come back. I'm like, no, I'm going to sit out on the audience. She's like, no, come back up. I just want to finish some things with you. I'm like, okay. And she refused to let me off for the next 9 days. And like, I basically taught a class about Tantra by being tricked. I was tricked into it. And she made me agree that I wouldn't tell anyone that this was the first class I had ever taught in this context. And then at the end, I asked her, it's done. Can I tell them now? Like, yeah. The feedback I got was like, no one would have known that.
Yeah. And
she was holding the space of saying, this is who you are. This is what you do. Stop goofing. Yeah. And so she was just pushing me, like, pretty hard, by the way. Like, this is what you're doing. But the classes has come with so many, like, different transformations. It's grown and evolved in just so many ways. And I continue to. Like, back then, the book was, I think, maybe 40 pages. Now it's 200.
Wow.
You know, so as I grow and evolve, I continue to share that evolution.
How many people are typically in a class?
12.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 to 12 is the number.
And how long is the class?
It's 8 or 9 days. It depends on the numbers and where I'm at. But I think we did a 8-day class.
We were 8 days.
8 days.
Is there like a certification that people get?
Yeah, and that's an issue.
Like a belt?
Yeah, there's a belt. You get a belt. You get a turban.
Yeah.
Still waiting.
Can I wear this belt?
You haven't finished your classwork, sorry. But it's interesting because the West really desires to have the certification and the letters behind their name. And so a lot of other tantrikas have said, what the fuck are you doing? You're offering a certified class? Like, who... From what certified board is this coming from? And it's like, okay, so what I have is I have a syllabus, I have a curriculum. I could basically give someone the total sum of what someone learned. Okay, so for that I can certify someone. I can certify that they've done these processes and they are now skilled to do these processes if they've completed the after coursework. So when they graduate from the class, that doesn't mean that they finally get their certification. They have to do 100 hours of work, of sessions, and they have to do, not with me, on their own, and they have to do some book reports and some other reports. And so what that does is that gives me a chance to say, okay, they're in. Because I used to just certify people right out the bat, and then that would be a mess. Yeah. Because people walk around like, I'm a Tantra teacher. Yeah. And they have no practical, hands-on experience. They didn't do anything with it. So... But honestly, the certification process is a Western idea, and in the East, it's a ridiculous concept. It just is. Yeah. So what I have come to know now is that the people who come to the class because they're supposed to be there. I am not selling that class. I just don't. People come to it because they're called to want to explore Tantra and share it with other people, and that takes a pretty heavy experience of self to be able to do that. Because I'm telling you right now, Tantra is not an easy path to take and to share with other people. It's like the front lines. It's like foxhole work of humanity. Yeah. Blood, sweat, and body fluids, and emotions and fears, and all that stuff's coming. And just is not a lot of people that want to deal with that kind of stuff.
Blood and bodily fluids are coming. All right. Sounds like fun. What sorts of challenges do people face the most when embarking on Tantra, in your opinions? Or in your observations, I'd say?
You mean as a practitioner or as just in general using it in their lives?
Both. What has been something that you've noticed? That was a doozy that this person had to go through on this particular journey that they started that they did not see coming.
Oh, I think just any kind of where you're actually working on yourself and getting to the truth, not just through Tantra or whatever method you use. When you pull back that veil and you start looking at what is, it can be alienating. You can't get off once you're on. And once you're on that, and I don't call it enlightenment myself, I just call it path to self-knowledge or awareness. And it can be really hard because you're doing work that a lot of people are too scared to do on themselves. They're facing that shadow side. And it's, for me, has been very difficult and in some ways has made me feel more connected to humanity and people, because I've always kind of put up a separation. And in other ways, I feel really distanced. And you and I, Arash, have talked about that before, where it's like not a lot of people are practicing consciousness and awareness at the level at which I'm trying to do. Or they're saying they're doing it, and it's kind of like, what do they call the spiritual bypass, right? Like they're kind of doing it, but they're not really doing it. And maybe I sound, egotistical or whatever, and that's cool. I'll work on that later, I guess. But, like, that's just my perception right now, is that I feel kind of alienated. And the work is hard, and I change so much, and some people still treat me like I'm the way that I was, like yesterday or 10 minutes ago or whatever. And I'm not. I'm different every time. And there's also a discomfort with being different and going into that unknown. So it's like, if I pull this structure out, if I pull this thing that I've been operating on, this story that I've had, and I take that out, now what? Now who am I? Am I a good person? Am I a better person? Do I know who the fuck I am? Do I know what I'm doing? No, I don't know. So being okay with the unknown, like, that shit's hard. There's no model for that. Not that I've known or seen. So, that.
For me, it's there's this place when I entered into Tantra, it was massive amounts of pleasure. And I just peaked. Like, I just went up and up and up and up and up. Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure I've never experienced before. Things I never even knew were possible. It was crazy cool. And I just peaked out and just, like, sat at the top for a while. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just dumped. Just, like, just blew up. Just everything fell out. And I blame Tantra for that. Like, at the time, I was like, this is Tantra that screwed my life up. Like, I thought I was in
What
bliss.
got screwed up?
Well, imagine...
You don't have to get into every detail.
No, of course not. But imagine, like, being offered an experience of life with freedom, with joy, with pleasure, like, just with... that I didn't even know possible. Okay? And I'm riding that wave. And then all of a sudden, like, out from underneath me, the whole world falls, and I crash. Because Tantra will do this. Pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. And imagine this. This is the best way to say it. You have a pad of concrete, and it's very old. It's been tamped down, so it's smooth. It's very smooth. And then someone has never done this before. They come with a power washer and they wash the asphalt. Yeah. There's going to be all these ruts and holes and things in the concrete. That old stuff has been pounded into that. And basically what happened was, like, Tantra came in and, like, basically flushed out all of the things I hadn't been dealing with. Yeah. Like this fast. So all of a sudden, I was dealing with my life with the red pill, blue pill situation. And do I want to hear the truth, or do I want to go back to sleep? Yeah.
And these were...
I was angry about that.
So this is ways that you perceived the world that came crashing down, or were they
my world?
Yes.
Like in how I perceive my world. Yes.
Okay. And thought systems that you had.
So basically, what happened was it was a very specific moment. So I was 28. I'm looking in the mirror. I just found Tantra. Been experiencing it for about 30, 40 days. Life was amazing. Like, totally transformed. But I still had all the structures in place of what I did every day. And I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm just looking at the girl that's in my bed, who's my partner. And I'm like, who is that person? What the fuck is she doing here? And I thought about the car that's in my garage. I'm like, why am I going to go down to that stupid car? Why am I going to get in that stupid car? Why am I going to go to that stupid job? I don't even care about that thing anymore. Why am I living in this stupid house? What the fuck am I doing in this life? And I recognized, I looked right at that guy in the mirror, and I'm like, you are lying about everything. There's not one thing that's real right now. And I'm people-pleasing, and I'm showing up in ways that make everything conflict avoidance, and I am not living.
Right.
I'm just fumbling and mumbling, and everyone thinks everything's great, and it's not. Like, I'm not happy. And so Tantra really, kicked my ass and woke me up, and it wasn't a nice day when that happened. Because I really liked my nice little pretty dream, honestly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I've yet to experience some sort of growth that is prefaced with pain. I mean, I'm sure it's out there, but it's always, like, some level of discomfort. The example I always give is, like, in order to grow bigger muscles, you're working them out, you're tearing them down, and they're rebuilding larger, That's
Absolutely.
That's the experience that we keep having. So that's, and you're right. And it feels like society has generally decided that if something is uncomfortable, it must be bad.
Yep.
And so that's what they
comfort.
Right.
Safety.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Tantra is one of the most unsafe things I could possibly imagine for someone. Honestly, I'm not kidding. But that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
That's an adventure. Like, a true adventure doesn't have safeties in place. It's not Disneyland that's all homogenized and, like, you can't do anything wrong, like you're on Autotopia and you can't crash. Why? Because you're just driving and there's a nice little rail that keeps you going. You know, I'm driving, yay! No, you're not. You take your hands off. It'll still take you to the same place. Just keep your foot on the pedal. Yeah. And that's like, but I'm free and I get to drive. And it's the same idea. It's like, what is freedom? Is freedom safe and homogenized, or is the adventure full of this unknown? And that's the gift that Tantra continues to offer me, and it's hard. It's a kick in the ass for sure, man.
Can you give a couple of examples of lessons that I might learn if I took your class? Like, what would be a practice, or what would be one of my homework pieces? I want to sort of try to give an example of what one might experience going through a Tantra course. I guess either of you can answer this because you took it and you taught it.
Is there something that stood out for you?
Something that stood out for me? I'd have to think about that
Yeah.
for a while. It's not on the top of my mind.
Yeah.
One of the things that I like to offer people is how to approach an individual from an energetic standpoint by teaching them the chakras in a way that it will allow them to easily and effectively identify issues in people's lives just by how they're talking. So, Amy was talking about how I work with her. She's like, he has a really great ability to listen to me and reflect back with energy work and touch, with all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, she's telling me everything. I don't need to figure, I can tell just by how she's talking about something what she's saying. And so she's like, well, you have told me things. Like, well, actually, you told them to me. I just reflected them back to you. Yeah. Like, your body language, your energy, your words, they're all creating this large thing. And a lot of people think that's magic, and it's not. It's actually, there's an ability to, if you understand how a person works, then you can just basically listen energetically and with your ears, and you can basically figure out exactly what's going on like this. It's not some magic trick. So that's one way to do that. And the next way is to...
would you be able to... I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you be able to give one example to the listeners right now that they could utilize? Is that something that can be done?
Sure. Yeah, give me a second. Yeah.
One thing they can utilize tomorrow when they go to work.
Great. If you're listening to someone talk, the words are there, but what are they doing with their hands? Where are they coming from with their hands? Like, what are they doing with their hands? Like, right now, I'm taking my hand and I'm pushing my heart out. Like, from my heart, my open palm is pushing outward to the microphone right now. Yeah. As I'm talking about. So, what is someone saying? So, if you were just to see me do this, other than my words, what might this motion mean to you if I was just doing this?
I don't know. I mean, I'm maybe because my head is already filled up with other stuff that I've learned about it. But I mean, I'm looking at general open body language.
Yeah.
I'm aware that you have not crossed your arms. You're kind of leaned back in the chair. We're not mirroring because my legs are crossed.
Because we're already in rapport. I was, if you remember, we were playing footsie there. Because I had my legs crossed like you did, and that was to get rapport with you. Yeah. But the moment we got rapport, I was like, I don't have to do that.
Yeah, as soon as you said the hands thing, I started noticing, I'm playing with my cuff.
Right. So if you see someone, like, for instance, what I was doing, which was I was taking my hand and I was talking about, if you hear someone communicating with you like this, it's about
moving your hand from your chest out.
Yeah, the heart, right? Just like pushing the energy out the heart. So that might be something else I'm sharing, which is like, okay, when someone's talking to you, but it also might mean when someone's trying to connect with you. So being able to access this kind of stuff is really supportive. But what I find is, like, each chakra has a particular, like, designation for, like, archetypes within ours. So first chakra is all about, like, money, safety, security, trust.
The first is root
chakra, which is like the anus and the base of the tailbone. And then we go up to the genitals. The genitals are the second chakra, which is all about sex, safety, and creativity and emotionality. And that's a big one. It's the sexuality and our emotional center are in the same place. And then we go to the third chakra, which is about ego, will, and self-esteem. That's the belly. And then the fourth chakra is the heart, and that's about connection and attachments. Fifth chakra is about communication, as well as what we hear, not just what we say, but it's what's coming in as well as what's going out. And then the sixth chakra, which is the third eye, and that's all about vision, not only what we see outward, but what we see inward. And then the last one is the seventh chakra. It's kind of like a spiritual passport. At the top of the head is just like whatever spirituality means, or whatever source means, or whatever that kind of stuff. That's kind of like the access point to that stuff. So these are just aspects of who we are. And a lot of people, without knowing it, unconsciously, will speak about something, and they'll be talking from a particular chakra. And all you have to do is watch what they're doing with their hands and how their body language is, and you can actually identify what they're really saying and where this is coming from. So someone could be coming from an idea of their relationship. They're like, and so right now what I'm doing is I'm taking my hands and I'm putting them just behind my neck. And I've seen people do this where their elbows are raised up, and they'll be talking about their relationship like, I just really struggling in my relationship right now. And they're kind of massaging their back of their neck at the same time. Yeah.
I'm usually doing it so I can show off my arms.
Great. Right? So which is great. But this body language right here is, I need to communicate more. I want deeper, more clear communication. That's why I'm massaging. I want this so bad. So they're not saying that. They're saying there's something wrong. It's about relationship, communication in relationship. So I can go a little bit deeper into that. So just by watching someone in their body, you might be able to perceive intuitively, just naturally, because we're human beings. If you don't overthink it, you just kind of like go with the first thing that might come up. You might notice that you're getting more information than you want. And what I do is I really cultivate that. I go a little bit deeper into that and help people understand that more, so you can work with people, because I think the chakras are a great access point to helping understand just about any problem that a person has going on.
That's interesting. You could do like your own little lie detector test, like watching what people are saying and how they're coming forward.
Even better when you're dating someone, or when you're trying to vet a dating situation, to be able to really read a person beyond their words, because a lot of people will put their best foot forward. They'll put the nicest clothes on. They'll say the nicest things, but they can't hide what they're doing unconsciously.
Right.
And so you can get a lot of information out of that. You can really potentially short circuit a really challenging relationship that's hidden, like challenges that are hidden. Yeah. Also, benefits that might be not revealed, like things that might be really exciting. Like I can tell when someone's playing really nice and they're very polite, and yet they have a lot of sensuality or sexuality. You can just tell with their body language, with how they're expressing themselves. And that could be like, oh, wow, okay, cool. That's nice. I don't need to see it right now, but it's nice to know that person has that.
Yeah. That's cool. Amy, did you have anything that you learned from the course that you found you implemented fairly quickly into your life?
As far as implementing into my practice, actually being with patients in the office, the one thing I really took away was getting people to take responsibility for what's happening in their life. And I'm learning to not coddle people as much. There's definitely, I work with people with really chronic pain and some really messed up stuff. And I want to be a space that feels safe for them to feel vulnerable and unhappy and kind of feel that. But I also want to be like, okay, now what? Let's get out of that story and let's get to the next thing. And so I think that the class has definitely helped me. It's a little janky right now. I feel like it's a little, I'm kind of playing with it a little bit to see what that looks like and to make it fit my personality in the way, but it actually fits me. It is a thing that I've always done, which is truth saying, saying what I think in that moment. There's also some pieces around just trusting my intuition. I've always said that intuition is 90% paying attention. There might be 10%, woo-woo stuff or whatever, but really paying attention, like what Shawn is saying what's happening in this body, what is the person actually saying, what's story, what's truth. And then there's some really cool techniques that I learned in the class. There's a technique where, somebody's talking about something and there's a clear belief system that's coming up, and this is what I mean by story. It's really just everything is always this way every time, or I am this person. Yeah. And it's it's not the truth, it's their truth in that moment. And what I call this work is reparenting yourself. You were raised in a certain way and you got certain skills and you developed a way to get through your life, because we all have challenges, whatever they might be. And now you're a grown up and you need to remove those things out and put in the right way, you know, with your adult brain and your the skills you have in this life. So I call that reparenting and giving yourself that space. So the bridging technique is a good one, which is basically tapping into the first time that somebody felt a certain way. And there's a process to work through that. And then taking out that old memory and replacing it with like a new, happy, awesome memory, which doesn't always work with everyone, but because a lot of people don't want to do that. It's too much.
They'll short circuit themselves. They'll actually sabotage the process because they really are holding on to the old belief that this has to be painful.
Sure,
yeah. And like I said, if I take that out, now what?
Yeah.
Now what's there? Now it's unknown, right?
Absolutely.
And so a really cool technique that we learned in class that I just used in a session the other day is when someone got stuck there, I was like, let's just move. And we just got up and we just started bouncing. Put on some music and we were just bouncing and moving and shaking it out. And that shifted things. I mean, literally, we just stood up and started shaking and bouncing around and just said, hey, like, make noises and do these things. And it all just kind of came out and moved. And then when we sat down, I was like, okay, we feel better now. And we can move forward with this. We can actually take that old crappy memory and replace it with something new. And so it's not like, oh, I have A, B, C, and D techniques that I'm going to do every single time someone comes in. It's all of these things, plus all the experience that I've had working in the healing arts and all the stuff I've done to my own self and had other people do to me, and saying what's happening in this moment, what makes sense for right now, and reading into that energy. So definitely things are shifting for me as a practitioner. I knew that doing group work, I think, is a thing I ultimately want to do, but I like doing individual work. I like working with men a lot. I see a lot of space for shifting the way that men are showing up in this world and the way they're being received. And as a feminist, I see a way a lot of feminists treat men, and I'm really disenchanted with that. And I feel like men need to be brought in, and the women that are already doing the work are primed to do that, to help men that want to do the work to be better. So I think that was a convoluted answer.
No. Yeah, that answered all. The bridging part was interesting because we did that with me. As we were describing it, I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar. Oh, wait, we did that. Because my question typically, I think, at like this juncture may have been, what does a typical Tantra session look like? But as you answered, there isn't a typical Tantra session.
Right. That's something I teach, actually, is to not follow a formula, but to literally show up for the person and where that person's showing up with you. Yeah. That's a very rare thing.
It's so rare that in our class, I think you had to say it every day, every single day in the class. It was like somebody was like, well, what? And it was always different somebody's, and it was the same answer. No, you intuitively do with what's showing up in the moment. There's not A, B, C, and D way to do it. And I get that that's scary, and I've done some sessions, and there's times where I'm like, okay, now what? And I'm like, okay, just got to do it. And there's not a wrong way to do it either. That's the other thing. It's like whatever shows up, shows up. And you came to me, and there's an energy there, and there's a thing that's happening. And like, I didn't know what the hell we were going to do together. And it was like, whoa, craziness.
Yeah, neither did I. I've always said that I'm like a therapist's like wet dream, because I'm so wide open. I'm like, bring it. Because so the experience that I had with you, so Amy was putting in her hours, as Shawn was describing earlier, and was I the first one?
I think you were, because I was still in the class, I think, or maybe it was right after.
Yeah, nice. That's pretty cool. Yeah,
it was pretty soon.
First one through the gate. So the way that I shared my experience with people was because a lot of people, I have a lot of friends that are very like, I'm not going to go so far as to say atheists, but they're not on board with a lot of what we're talking about here. But the explanation that I gave a lot of people is that it, even if you walked away from it not having felt some sort of a shift, which I did, by the way, just going through the experience feels just therapeutically very healing. And it reminded me, I had a Reiki session earlier this year, and it was the same kind of thing where like just having that discussion, like getting into your thoughts, and here's the thing, and here's the thing that happened in your childhood, and here's the thought. Just going through that conversation alone felt amazing. And then, here's the funny thing. I don't remember a lot of the session. It just all kind of went blank. I remember laying down on the ground at some point. I remember the shadow clear as day. So I'm going to share sort of like what our process was so that the listeners can get an idea of. Now, we already established that there is no typical session, but we can go through sort of my session, and I would love for you guys to chime in, like pop-up video. Okay. I just aged myself a little bit. So that would be great to kind of like talk about sort of like what went into some of that. And I didn't know what I was coming in for. I think we talked about performance anxiety, which is the thing that I'd experienced. We did talk about it earlier, right?
Do I have your permission to say my perception of everything?
I am an open book.
Okay.
Bring it.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I did the complete opposite of like putting on costumes. Like, let me just tell you about every detail about my life on a show. Okay. So I think one of the things was performance anxiety, and like again, like something a lot of. I have a respectable resume of sexual experience, and like that's not something that people would think of me, but it's also something I don't really have a lot of shame about. It's a human body. This is something that I experienced. So for me, I had to get like really comfortable with partners. And over the years, I kind of just made peace with that, where there is this idea that as a man, in especially, I guess not even Western culture, in any culture, you're expected to be a machine that can just like, boing, 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 like you're up and you're ready to go, you know? And like the instant that you're not doing that, there is a lot of judgment in society about it. So I went through a long period of judging myself for that. And then I made peace with that. Like, all right, well, this is just who I am. I need to have sort of more comfort and more peace with the person that is going to be my partner. And that was sort of the thing that I came in with. And go ahead. You said you wanted to share perception.
So basically, we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the actual problem was.
Yeah.
And I used...
Was that longer than you've experienced with other people?
No, I don't think so. I think you were ready to get to it, so we got there. I wasn't sidestepping a lot of like bullshit. How long did
we talk before we started?
I mean, the minute you walked in is when we started. So
okay, no. I mean, right. So this is the way that I tried to explain the session to people is that there was a talk therapy chapter of it. In order to figure out what the hell it is that we're going to focus on.
You're uncovering something.
There was an intake, you know, and I used actually Shawn's formula of like, and it was actually a great formula that he has in the book. So it kind of helped me.
That was bridging.
That was not the bridging part. That was later. I did also use the beginning of the book because I don't have it memorized. But yeah, so I used a formula of like, why are you here? Why are you really here? How do you know that this is a problem? How long has this been a problem for you? Like, how do you, that kind of stuff.
She's getting in that intake with the intent is to drop any kind of victimization or external reasons for why your life isn't the way it is. And then to get to a place of where did you create it? And if you created it, then you can uncreate it. And if someone's willing to go there, then the work of bridging can be done. Because if I created it, then I can certainly uncreate it. I'm the architect. Yeah. I'm the engineer, so I can dump this thing. And so that's what that process does.
Yeah.
It gets you to like, oh wow. Yeah.
Right. I want to say it felt like we talked for like a half an hour to 40 minutes.
I would guess. Right. I wasn't really. I know that probably ultimately our time together was about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours.
Yeah. That's about typical.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the one part that is typical. 2.5 hours.
Well, I mean, some people try to do an hour session, and it can be challenging because that can be a hello.
Right.
An hour.
Right. Right. So we dug, and what we found was that. So I in my earliest part of I have no memory of my childhood of a time where I didn't feel responsible for the people around me. And that's something that I knew from earlier therapy sessions, EFT sessions on Playa, and other stuff. So, and then when we got into some of the nitty-gritty of that, the thing that came up was that I was always aware that I might say the wrong thing and my mom is going to get a beating. Okay. And so the thing that we agreed is the thing we're going to work on is that on some level, I've decided that I hurt women.
Great.
And I hurt people. Which was interesting because that was not like at all what I was thinking, but that had been a thought that I'd had, like, I'm worried about being creepy or I'm worried about being too forceful and this and that. And I have a lot of women in my life and I've had multiple women say like, that's a really bizarre fear that you have because it's not something we associate with you at all. But that thing still was there. So I'm sorry. So anyway, so then this is the part where it all got fuzzy. I don't remember what happened next. I know we concluded that, and then the next thing I remember is the shadow.
Really?
Yeah.
So we did the bridging technique, which was replacing an old memory with something new that was, more, the ideal situation
Supportive.
for you, more supportive. And it was kind of like, if you could have a magical unicorn be there, whatever, anything that felt really good.
Was I sitting on the couch?
You were. We moved a bunch. So you were on the couch initially, and then and just full disclosure, at that point I was a little bit like, okay, I don't know what to do. And so I just kind of sat there for a minute. I was like, all right, okay, you know what I'm going to do is toning. So that's another technique, is you learn is it the seed sound for each chakra?
The bija mantra or the seed sound.
Yeah. So each chakra has a sound, and this is the thing I struggle with, is the toning. I've actually been getting better because I've been practicing it. So I have some throat chakra stuff where I'm like, okay, I'm going to put my hands on this person's body, and then I'm going to make a sound over their chakra. Like,
okay, I remember this
it's a little funky for me. I don't know why it's so sticky for me. I've been working on it.
Because it's weird and new agey.
It's kind of weird and new agey, and it's like real intimate, even though
Totally.
we
Absolutely.
have a friendship and and whatever, and it's just a little weird.
Totally.
It is weird. It's weird. But it's great too. And I mean, it's amazing. So in my opinion, it shakes things up in the chakra, and it sort of attunes it to, I don't know, it like pushes things out. I'm still experiencing what it does, and I think it's different for different people. So we did some of that to kind of just move things, because I felt like there was a stuckness there. And then I had you lie on the ground, and we did, it's like a self-pleasuring, but it's not actual touching of yourself.
Oh, right.
So it's basically drawing, what is it? You're kind of, I'm trying to remember exactly what we do. So I have you lay on the ground and then just start making the sounds of pleasure.
In the motion.
In the motion, yeah. There's a hip rocking back and forth. So
Yeah.
you're doing, but you're not touching yourself. And so we worked with just like, what does it feel like? And I think in that moment I was directing you like, this is the best thing you've ever felt in your life. This is the divine feminine. This is, the coupling that feels the best. And you, to your credit, just went there.
Yeah.
And
I remember feeling it. I was feeling like a body, like a light orgasmic feeling throughout my body.
Nice.
Yeah. And when I have learned this in the class, when we did it in the class in a group of people, which doing things in a group is amazing too, because that group energy creates something, and you've got people that are moaning around you and everyone's kind of going for it. And, when we were done, I was like, this is shamanism, right? Like this, I was like, what just happened was a weird, like a spiritual experience, like a being was here, things were here with me. I was not alone. I mean, it is like a different, I don't know what you would call it, maybe a psychedelic experience, sure, whatever. But I think you're breaking through that veil and seeing what's really there and working with the energies that are available to you. So we did that.
And so then, what's happening there is that your brain, even though you may not be touching yourself, if you just get your brain going in that direction, it freaks out. It says, what the fuck, are we having sex? And it starts flipping all the chemistry on and washes your body in a flood of all of the sexual chemistry that goes through the body very, very quickly, which means all of a sudden you're having a very, very visceral experience of sexuality, even though it's not actually sex. You can have all the benefits and the residual effect of having sex because you're getting the same chemical wash, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I think I was just directing you and sort of just kind of watching what you were doing energetically. And then I let it go down for a little while, like the energy come down for a minute and let it come back up. And so you were able to...
Which is important.
There's peaks and valleys with it. And then I believe I did energy work on you. I don't remember everything. It's been a little while. And then I had you do this draw process where you're thinking about drawing orange energy in through the perineum area and into the sacral area, and you're filling up basically your second chakra with that orange energy and then holding it in the body and releasing it. And I don't know what that does, but it's cool. We learned it.
So basically what it is the second chakra is this endless well of energy, and if you can cultivate and kind of build that up, and then instead of just release it in the form of an orgasm, you spill it across the body, and all of a sudden you're giving sexual energy to your heart, to your throat, to all these other places, because it's not just sexual energy, it's creativity. So all of a sudden now you could be like dosed with a huge amount of like muse-like energy. That's you created it, but it's like giving you like creativity and access, and so it's a really wonderful fuel.
I want to say it was during that section that I had the shadow show up.
So then what happened, in my opinion, is a soul retrieval. And you started seeing you're a shadow, which
that part I remember really clearly.
And so you can speak to what happened to you, because I kind of knew almost pretty quickly what was going on, but I let you go through the process, and it was actually mind-blowing.
Yeah, it was, I remember you were directing me through something, and I wanted to not interrupt you, but visually my mind went to Utopia, the San Diego regional burn that we never shut the fuck up about in this show. I imagine...
One life.
Yeah. It's like every episode Utopia comes up somehow. I imagine, I had this clear as day visual that I was at Utopia, but there's nobody there. And I was in probably down close to Fool's Errand, like that, by that pathway. And I'm standing there, and there's this large, very built, large-armed, tall, dark silhouette wearing a top hat. And all I could see was this silhouette's eyes and his smile. And it looked super fucking creepy and scaring me. And I remember I was like, okay, this will go away. And I was trying to wave it away because I was trying to pay attention to what you were directing me to do. And it wouldn't leave. It just kept coming at me. And I think that's when I was like, Amy, there's somebody else here. And then that's when I described what was happening. And at first you're like, all right, well, tell him to go away. And I was like, go away. And it was
real half-hearted too.
Yeah,
You're like,
go away. You're like, go away. Go the fuck away. And it wouldn't leave. And then it kept starting to walk away, but then it would look back at me with the same creepy smile. And I think you said all right, let's see what it wants. Why don't we talk to him? And I sort of reached out to him, and he wasn't using words, but the smile little by little started to change from creepy to just warm. And I felt like I wanted to hug him. And I did. And once I did, it no longer felt like it was something else. And I remember you said, gee, it's tall, dark, big guy who smiles a lot. Who does that sound like, Arash? and I felt sort of merging with this thing. And did we end it after that? I don't remember after that. Again, I remember this part clearly, and then it's gone again.
I think we did. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was,
That's enough.
I thought it was really interesting that your initial reaction was whoa, who's that guy? And that's how you feel like people might be perceiving you, especially person of color, really tall man, at being a man, right? All of those things. And we had kind of talked about that. And so when that showed up, that's why I knew what it was pretty quickly, not immediately, because I was like, whoa, what the fuck's going on here? I didn't expect, I was like, is that an entity? What is this? I didn't know at first. And then I was like, oh, okay, this is really clearly a part of yourself. And so for me, that the idea of shamanism, which I have not studied very much, is that, you're able to travel into these other realms and find the pieces of yourself that broke, when there was trauma, and reintegrate them back into yourself. And that's why I think that's what happened, was a soul retrieval.
Oh.
Bridging also, yeah.
No, that's bridging. That's pretty much the process. It's one's shamanic where you do it for them. Bridging is where the person's doing it for themselves. It's the exact same process, though.
Yeah, and you did it for yourself.
They're reclaiming a piece. I want to share something. Can I analyze you for a second?
Sure. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. The character having this creepy smile, and you not seeing it as there's something else, but then it softens.
Yeah.
That's probably you in that place of trying to be safe when actually you don't need to be. You are. You see, so that sense of creepiness is creepy because you're trying to be safe or you're trying to be good when you already are that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so to be able to go when he actually finally relaxes when you want to hug him, that totally makes sense because that's the access point to authenticity.
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, dude, you are the gift. You don't have to try to be. Yeah. You just are it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something to, as a man, to we don't have to carry the guilt of all the other Nimrods that were before us. We can just be who we are and hold that, and that's enough. You don't have to make amends for all the others.
Yeah, I can tell you that since the session, which you're describing right now feels like it's downloaded.
Awesome. So good to hear.
And it's been, I've been texting Amy periodic updates.
Yeah.
So
cool.
I noticed there's I noticed I became a lot more extroverted. So the next couple of days after it, I felt really exhausted. And it's the same experience that I had, from a past couple of energy sessions that I'd had in other practices, where a couple of days went by, I was just like tired. I'm like, oh, I feel so fucking tired. And people were like, well, could it be because you were partying all week? I'm like, no, it's Tuesday. There's no way I'm tired today. So no, it wasn't. And I can feel when it's different. And when the exhaustion went away, I felt myself become a lot more extroverted. So like I just did this like burst of energy. Like I want to be out and around people. I have found, and again, it's been a short period, but I feel like it's become a lot easier to eat right. And the connection that I'm making is part of what I've been journaling about a lot, which is I've been really like trying to stay aware of the idea that sometimes the difficulty when we have with like maintaining a healthy weight is connected to childhood trauma and trying to like we try to get fatter in order to keep people further away from us.
Absolutely. It's armor.
Yeah, it's exactly armor. So eating right had gotten easier. Immediately I noticed a lot more attention from women that I found attractive.
Nice.
Boom, like real quick.
Nice.
And I'm sure it was like a double exchange kind of thing. Like I just remember this moment with somebody that I had been seeing around me for like, over a year in social circles. And we just had a moment where we made eye contact, and there was that, when you make an eye contact with somebody where there's a mutual attraction, and you're like, oh, and we both kind of looked at each other like, where have you been? Oh, that's right, you've been here for a year and a half, and I just did not notice you until this exact moment. It's been pretty fucking awesome. Energy's been up. I feel more focused, and and the couple of sexual experiences that I've had in then, zero issues. Like not even like that fear doesn't exist.
Nice.
In the back of my mind somewhere.
So
yeah.
So great to hear.
It's been pretty funny. And high fiving.
You did it. Yeah. I just facilitated it, right?
So it's been really great. It's so funny.
I had to do it again.
I'd had my buddy that lives in Mexico. He brought me some Viagra that sometimes I'd keep around just in case I'm partying too hard one night and I meet somebody. And I'm like, I don't really need these. So now they're just kind of sitting there.
Cool.
So it's been, definitely, it was very potent.
It's great.
It was a beautiful experience.
Good deal.
Yeah, I really, that piece around men not having to carry what other men have, there's a lot, you're not the only one. There are a lot of men that I know that are feminists and are so, neutered or restricted by this idea of not wanting to be that creepy guy and not wanting to be that guy that it cripples them.
Yeah.
And I keep trying to say, we know that. I can see that you're not that guy. You don't have to tiptoe around it. You can ask for what you want. And it's really interesting. There's ideas around that men are taking sex from women. And of course, this is heteronormative way of speaking about these things, that a woman's not getting anything out of it. So there's this really weird idea about sex that if you are getting sex from a woman, you've taken something from her, and that she doesn't, she has no autonomy in the situation. So there's really interesting beliefs that as the more I've been kind of working with men, I just see coming up. And it's really interesting in the way I've kind of looked at feminism for a long time. The more I learn about it and the more I think about the way people think about it, I don't quite have a grasp on it. I don't know what quite needs to change, but it's really, you don't have to carry that wounding.
It changed.
And women don't have to carry that wound. We can choose to be empowered and not victimized in it.
That's right.
And I know that might make me really unpopular with some people, and that's okay. I choose to...
It might make you popular with a lot of other people.
I choose to not walk around in fear all the time. Yes, it happens. And, I'm a white woman and I'm middle class, and so yes, I have that privilege. But I also have chosen to be that way, and I could choose very easily to let trauma of the past have me show up in a victimized way and not empowered way. Right. And the less angry I've gotten, the more the better my life is. And so when I'm not pushing people away, I have that space to see hey, you're not a jerk. That's obvious.
No, I think the change that you're describing, I'm observing it happening. We're not quite there, but a lot of men from closer to our generations, when the guy who settled for being the girl's best friend in high school, and he's like the nice guy. And then like that same nice guy grows up to be super resentful and angry. And they have that thought process of like, I've been so nice to you and you keep choosing assholes. And, you know, and there's
and they're like the
vicious
worst misogynists.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, it's the worst. But I can tell you like where what we're talking about right now affects my personal life the most, like the baggage that comes from the Nimrods. Trying to set dates. Because, fuck, my calendar is really full. And so, like, if I set Thursday night at 8 p.m. and you say, like, sure, cool, let's do that. And then, like, they cancel, maybe because they're not interested or they meet somebody else or who knows, a million things that come up in their lives. Maybe they didn't really want to agree to it to begin with, but we had an agreement. Now it's in my fucking calendar and now I got to cancel it. So I'm frustrated because now I have to move my calendar bullshit around. But at the same time, I get it. Because so many women have had so many terrible experiences being direct and honest. And like, God, if it was possible to just get people, and I can speak as a heterosexual male, if I can get heterosexual women to like agree to just like say no, like, yeah, no, I'm not really into you. Like, this isn't going to be a thing. That would be wonderful.
You could say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being honest with me.
Yes.
That's so awesome.
Yes.
Can I hug you? Because you just said you were honest with me. Thank you. But
it is rough though, because like when they do play the avoidance game, it frustrates me, but I also get it. Like, I'm totally compassionate. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, you've had to deal with a lot of bullshit. So
yeah, like
that
threats of violence, being called a bitch, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That stuff doesn't happen to me anymore, really. Actually,
well, because I'm seeing you make a shift of how you're approaching things too.
Right.
Like, you don't have to slay people as much as I thought in the past.
Yeah.
What are you saying? That I might have been a little edgy?
I'm saying that you don't have to slay people as much as you.
Right, like, yeah, it's that the fight, or just like, okay, this is just the way it is.
There's
right?
acceptance almost to things, and then not having to, you know, kind of like become like a vigilante to make justice happen. I think that's what happened when I see a lot of the feminists is they're taking plays out of the playbook of the patriarchal, and that's the problem.
Yep.
And like the gift of if we want to go more down like the matriarchal wisdom, it is unique and all by itself. It does not look like the other stuff. And I think that there's if we can find where those two books work well together to make something super, then we have a humanist experience, and that's a really great place too. Yeah. But, you know,
get a nice yin and yang balance going.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's
should have shocked you.
It's yang.
Yang. Pronunciation.
I'm just waiting all day to text somebody. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad we got to get that for you. All right. If people are interested in learning more about the course, where do they go?
TantraQuest.com.
Okay. TantraQuest.com. And Amy, if they're interested in getting services through you?
My website is Innerspark ACU.
ACU, that's .com?
.com. Like InnersparkACU.com.
Okay. And for any listeners who are maybe riding your bike or driving your car and didn't have time to write that down, feel free to message us at burnerpodcast.com and we'll send you the links. Okay, well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, there it is. I didn't mention this in the opening, but I don't know if you can tell in the recording that my voice sounds a little clogged. A bunch of people around San Diego suddenly got the same bug where like we just lost our voice for a couple of days. We're not really sick, just the voice just got up and walked away. It was kind of fucking weird. Anyway, new episodes are up on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. We are on multiple podcasting platforms such as Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, Spreaker, among many others, not udders like the animal. We are also on iHeart Radio now, so if you want to listen to the show, it is not hard to find. The Burner Podcast movement is made possible due to the efforts of various contributing producers, as well as our regular staff, which include our network music editor, Navji Serna, mentioned that earlier, who also produces Burner Podcast Presents Alkaline. Check that show out. Our online editor is Tori Massey, Alkaline producer Amber Rose, contributing producer Super Suze out of the Bay Area, recording engineer Freckle, chief playa scientist Romero Martinez, special project manager Paul McCarthy, executive producer Meg King, and you, dear listener. Our intermission music is by Duckman. Check out his music at duckmansd.bandcamp.com. The Burner Podcast theme song is America's Horse with No Name Remix. produced by Joman. Check out his music over at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. So until next time, love and light and all that other crap. Good night.